Research at EcoBank. Dolapo is joining us to have a bit of some conversation regarding the state of the NNPC if this state oil corporation is turning the corner. Dolapo, hope you had a nice weekend.
Yes, I did. Thank you very much. How was yours?
Thank you. I'm good. I'm good. Now, the key question is there on the street and on the TV screen. Is the NNPC turning the corner?
Well, in terms of the processes that they've put in place, I'd say yes. It's going to take a bit of a while for the figures to also catch up. In my opinion, the figures will eventually catch up, possibly Q1 2017. I'd say 2016 is a bit of a stretch because, again, don't forget we're dealing with a lower oil price. We're also dealing with lower oil production. And if you look at the finances of the NNPC, if we start to get into the numbers, you realize that where's the bulk of the profit or the bulk of the revenue also coming from? There are from two key segments. On the upstream side, you have MPDC and NGC actually pulling a lot of weight on the profitability side of things. But for revenue, the bulk of the revenue is still from PPMC, which is really about handling the downstream products. Now, the minister was right in talking about the fact that because of the direct sale, direct purchase model, they are able to control more of the products. They are also able to generate a lot of revenue from that front, and that is helping them reduce their deficit. But if you look at what has happened currently, due to the fuel scarcity we've had this year, they've had to switch back to a model where we have all the importers, all the independent marketers, and all the various importers receiving import licenses again. And NNPC has only been allocated about 40% for Q2. They did about 78% for Q1. So we may have some challenges with pushing the numbers to a point where we get to break even.
Yes, these challenges will be there. Now, but again, if you look at what the NNPC has been trying to do in terms of reforms, do you think this will hasten this corporation from being a record loss-making organization, what you call a money-guzzling machine? You produce in crude oil, you sell in crude oil in dollars, you sell in petrol, you're not making a dime, you're running deficit, 50 billion for the month of September last year. Who runs business that way?
Nobody does. I mean, it's really appalling. But I mean, we're starting to see that change. And in terms of the processes that have been put in place, I think yes. In terms of tendering for various contracts, in terms of openness and transparency with the transactions that the NNPC is involved in, I think those are key things that are very essential for reducing the deficit. And we saw that in the last quarter of last year because they really implemented these processes in the last quarter, around October last year. And we saw the impact throughout last quarter. Last quarter, the average deficit for the quarter was about $12 billion loss. Whereas if you compare that to all the various quarters before it, particularly Q3, which was particularly bad, was about an average of about $22 billion, which was also a loss as well for that quarter. But it started to go down, and by December it was down to 11. As we speak, in January this year, they reduced it to 3 billion, but due to some issues in February, we're all aware of all the fuel scarcity and issues with the forecados also went offline. The deficit has risen to about 24 for February, but it should go lower by March. So we may still be having a high deficit for March, for Q1 2016. But again, for me, the key thing is we stick to those processes, ensure that there's openness in all contracts and transactions, ensure that there are no leakages in terms of revenues, because PPMC for me is a key point where we need to really address. There's a lot of revenue there. About 77% of NNPC's revenue is with PPMC. Now, PPMC cannot be posting a loss because every year it posts a loss. And last year as well, it also posted an aggregate loss of about 62 billion naira. So that needs to be addressed. If you're controlling 77% of revenue, you must contribute something to the profit, to the bottom line, which is where I think those processes will really help.
Yes, let's end the conversation. Do you think on a long-term basis, in the long run, the PIB and the deregulation of the down sector will help the NNPC become much better organization faster than it currently is run?
Well, you know me, I think I've always maintained that point that I'm a big fan of the deregulation of that market. I think it will. I think, of course, there will be the short-term reactions in terms of pricing and inflation and all that, but in the longer term, it is the best option to go. Deregulation will free up so much capital that right now is being plugged into subsidies, it's being plugged into trying to make sure there's enforcement of prices across the country and all that. All that is capital that really should be going into repairing infrastructure to ensure easier distribution of products and all if the market is fully deregulated. So in my opinion, yes, I think it will help. And deregulation is a key part of the PIB, which needs to be passed as well.
Okay, Dolapo Oni, you know, we can continue this conversation on and on. So let's continue that on Twitter. You know where to find Dolapo at Dolapo. That's at DORLAPO, isn't it? Do I get that right?
DOLARP.
Yeah, DOLARP. Thank you very much for that correction. That's how you find Dolapo on Twitter. Get on the conversation. Thank you very much. Get on with your work for the rest of the day. Dolapo Oni, head of energy research at EcoBank here in Lagos via Skype.